now, stewarding the open space above her land in Homestead Valley and Mill Valley. Her parents were co-founders of the Homestead Valley Land Trust, so she's sort of following in their footsteps. And she spent the last decade working to enhance biodiversity on the land that they helped to protect. Believing that people only care for what they know and leveraging her software engineering background, she started with a website and trail map for the Land Trust to encourage exploration of their wilderness next door, published a Blooming Now blog to document Homestead's wildflowers as they bloomed, and has led wildflower walks. Most impactful, though, were her many wild habitat restoration projects around the valley that tackled invasive broom, ivy, cotoneaster, thistles, grasses, and more in biodiversity hotspots. Marabeth will discuss stepping up to help biodiversity in her backyard, learning how to pick her battles in the weed-rich environment of a wildland-urban interface, and the abundant rewards of tending the wild. There are also some wonderful plants that grow in that area. So Marabeth, go ahead and start your program.
Okay. So yeah, hi, and thank you. I can't believe it's been 10 years. Let's see if I can get rid of this. No, that's not what I want to do. Sorry. I'm messing with things that are no interest of me.
I can only see your slides, so
Yeah.
you might be seeing more, but it looks good from.
Yeah, well, but sorry guys, I've got technical difficulties and I am going to need to do something different because I can't see my slides.
Ah.
Stop sharing. Sorry. I'm supposed to be a technical kind of person. There we go, that's better. Okay. So, yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I can't believe it's been 10 years. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. Homestead Valley, where I am now, is part of the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok people who first inhabited Marin at least 10,000 years ago and whose descendants are still alive today. This is on the homepage of the Homestead Valley website. It was written in consultation and with permission from a representative of the Coast Miwok. This is Homestead Valley. It's a watershed. The circle of land, the orange circle shows you the watershed boundary. It's the Reed Creek watershed, which flows into Arroyo Cordamadera del Presidio, which goes down Miller Avenue here, and then into Richardson Bay. Some landmarks, we've got the Miller Avenue Whole Foods around here. We've got the 2AM Club. We've got the Marin Horizon School. Stolte Grove is the Redwood Grove, sort of at the apex of the valley. The Dipsy Steps come up from Mill Valley right around here and cross over and go down to Muir Woods. This is the road to Muir Woods. This is Four Corners. The house I grew up in is right there. You can see eucalyptus pretty clear, even from this satellite image. They're here, here, and here, and a big grove over here. We also have these wonderful aerial historic photos, thanks to Joan Florsheim at UCSB for sharing them with me. This is around when I was born. You can see the eucalyptus are doing still very well. You can distinguish them here, here, and here. This is the Belvedere Reservoir. It's now Edgewood Park. And again, where I grew up and where I am right now is right there. And then we dropped to 1946. where the eucalyptus are still very obvious. They came in the 1850s during the gold rush, so they'd had a time by then to find their way to Homestead. So my family, as Kristen mentioned, moved to Homestead in 1962. In 1973, my father was one of the original trustees of the Homestead Valley Land Trust. The land abuts GGNRA land, which really extends its reach. There's wildland from my back door south to the Golden Gate Bridge and north really far up the coast. I've been on the board of the Land Trust since 2016 when my mother left. And the mission of the Land Trust is to protect, maintain, and restore the land for the benefit of sustainable public enjoyment, wildlife habitat, and wildland fire safety. That's me in red with a badminton racket, and we're camping up in the land behind our house. The yellow is undoubtedly broom, so that's definitely going. But this is a coffee berry bush, and there's a toyon and a bunch of baccharis. And this area now is completely overwhelmed with brush. So this is no longer anything like a meadow. It's now shrubland. I grew up knowing broom very well. It was planted on the hill above my house by the previous owners, probably as for erosion control and as an ornamental. We played in it. We made tunnels through it and forts in it and got lots and lots of poison oak in it because it's a wonderful cohabitant with poison oak. This is that same view today. We have been weeding this hill pretty much every year for the last decade. We've done some planting of prostrate baccharis, and I sprinkled some wildflower seeds around. The native grasses, which were not part of the seed mix, have come back beautifully on this hill. The native wildflowers, not so much. This here is the original bamboo that has been there since forever, and cut it every year, and it's still there. So tough one. This is the Homestead Valley Land Trust trail map. You can see the jurisdictional boundaries. The Kelly green is the land trust lands. The lime green is GGNRA. We've got State Park. We've got the National Monument down in Muir Woods. Some communities like Amaranth have wildland that they protect on their property. Some of our trails go through there. This trail map was one of the first volunteer activities I did for Homestead, even before I was on the board. It was replacing a map that was hand-drawn and outdated. And serendipity stepped in. I was hiking the trails and I met cartographer Ben Peace out on the trails. And he'd bought the Olmsted map, the rights to the Olmsted map, and he was walking the trails in order to prove what he was going to publish. We ended up collaborating, and I would proof this section of the map for him. And he eventually sold us the rights to this for a nominal fee. I added the junction numbers, which maybe you can see if there are signposts at the junctions, they will have a medallion on them with the number on it so that you can find your way. This is on the homepage of the Land Trust website. The first habitat restoration project that I did in Homestead was driven by curiosity and the love of a beautiful flower. I would hike this trail in the spring and I would see this beautiful flowers poking out from underneath broom in this area here. And I was curious to see how far that patch would extend. In this north-facing oak madrone woodland meadow remnant, you can see how this was once a meadow zone. So I came back in the dry season in October, and this is the wall of broom that I encountered. We're on the trail here. And I spent about a week with a broom puller and a handsaw and some clippers. I had really no strategy for broom disposal. I probably just pushed it out of sight down the hill. I think my only strategy was being very thorough because it looks very thorough. There's like nothing left, and it goes up above as well. You can see that there's all sorts more broom down below that I didn't get to, but I did clear to that level. And then, you come back in spring, and this is what I found, is that indeed the patch was a very big patch, and in fact, it descended below the line of broom that I had been able to clear. And this turns out to be a very biodiverse place. There's lots of iris. There's spotted coral root orchid, which in Homestead doesn't have spots. And we have a yellow and a red form, which are both at this site. There's Artemisia californica, which is undoubtedly a legacy of a much meadowier time. There's Calochortus umbellatus, which is our rare Oakland star tulip that grows here. Owl clover, barberry, sanicle. It's just a really lovely spot. A couple of years later, I realized, or probably didn't take me that long to figure it out, that this isn't land trust land. This is GGNRA land. So that gave me the excuse or the opportunity to meet the wonderful Maria Alvarez of the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, who does habitat restoration projects on GGNRA land. She told me that this is one of the only places in GGNRA where they have Pedicularis densiflora. That's this warrior's plume flower. She brought in habitat restoration team a couple of times. This here, you can see, has been cleared. Now we have cleared the entire site all the way down. It's a very steep site, but we cleared all the broom all the way down so that we could visualize the entire area, and then up into the meadow behind us. And this is more recently, this is 2023, when the patch by the trail is still being weeded. The oak trees are succumbing to probably sudden oak death, and we just haven't gotten to the broom down below, so that is blooming again and continuing that problem. The next big project I did, or no, the next project I did was much closer to home. It was right behind my house. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I had teenagers in the house and I wanted to get out of the house. And so I went up in the backyard, and I was really into Hamilton. So yeah, there's my house. And so this is just right there. So I had put the soundtrack of Hamilton on, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I would work for that period of time and cleared this meadow. This is an example of how I forget to take before pictures. This would undoubtedly have been full of broom, and I just didn't photograph it. But this is a before picture of this patch of broom up in there that I did remember to take, and then the broom pulled January 3rd. So yeah, between Thanksgiving and New Year's. This trail has since been rerouted as well by the land trust, because it was kind of a torrent of a river if there was rain, and now it's off the meadow as well. This is one of the lovely surprises that I found while I was working this site. I've seen a lot of these up in meadow. This is a meadow without any creek next to it, and that these giant salamanders can find habitat there. A little later, I got more sophisticated and learned to tackle trees. I cut the bays and the plums, any Doug firs to expand this meadow. And you can haul out from here, so we could get it to the road and get it chipped. And then this is the result. This is the meadow right nearby. This is an enormous patch of Fritillaria affinis that comes every year. This is part of the patch. There's more up here, there's more down there. And also in this meadow, we have the iris, we have the Oakland star tulip, we have Trillium chloropetalum, we have shooting star, osoberry, Coralisa striata, striped coral root orchid. That's in one of two places in Homestead, is found here. Angelica, California Angelica is the only place in Homestead where I know is found here. Also Rupertia, California tea we have here, nowhere else. Lots of fetish adder's tongue, crimson columbine, great big patches of Pacific hound's tongue, milkmaids, yerba buena, snowberry. It's just a lovely spot. So at this point, back to 2016, when I took on this meadow, I was pretty sobered by the big effect that I was having, these huge piles of biomass that I would generate and these large areas that I would clear. So I studied literature and worked as a software engineer. I had no training in botany. I had a lot of questions about best practices. I needed guidance on how best to take care of the land. So I looked around for resources, and I don't think there could be a better community to come into as a volunteer and get just wholehearted help at every turn and all sorts of opportunities to learn. I did the sod blitz, which is the sudden oak death survey where you collect symptomatic bay leaves and then they get submitted to UC Berkeley's lab to determine if there's have sudden oak death. I found out that a lot of the oaks in Homestead have sudden oak death. I did bio blitzes. I learned iNaturalist. I'm a real techie, so iNaturalist and I got on very well. I learned, that was really when I started learning plants, was by doing bio blitzes. And then I started doing volunteer habitat restoration work. A lot of it was just to get onto protected land that wasn't open to the public, like Bohemia Ecological Preserve in Sonoma. I would volunteer to do habitat restoration. I learned about managing broom. I learned that a samurai pole saw is the saw for me. I volunteered at Jenner Headlands and Estero Americano with the Wildlands Conservancy before those properties were open to the public, and with Maria Alvarez and her Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy habitat restoration team and invasive plant patrol. I would join them whenever they came to Homestead. And these were the main ones that I volunteered with. They're all run by women, which was very helpful to me because they're more plant focused and fine weeding focused, rather than like I did some volunteering at Willow Creek in Sonoma, and it was chainsaws and trails, and my expertise was becoming the plants, so these were better for me. As I did learn the plants, I started blogging about them. When a new plant bloomed, I would take a picture. I would post when it bloomed. And in the beginning, I put where as well. I would attach maps so you could see where the flowers were. I've since given up on that. I would repost to Nextdoor and to the Homestead Valley Land Trust Facebook page that I then would share to CMPS. So maybe you guys have seen some of that there. I also would capture the blooming date in a database that is on the Homestead Valley Land Trust website, a botanical inventory database that was originally populated by a floristic analysis by Wood Biological that the County of Marin commissioned. So I entered that data, and you can see, the source would be Woods Biological for that sighting. And then down here, this one I added to the database. And then all of the first sightings of these flowers, for what it's worth, a bit of data on them that you can sort by and find by, and hopefully be a nice, good shortcut on how to find out what your flower is in Homestead. I did the Environmental Forum of Marin Masterclass. My presentation was on wildland gardening, which did cover some of the same stuff here. CNBS was a wonderful resource throughout all of this. Botanists who are so generous with their time, like Kristen and Tanya and Doreen and Eva, who would come out to sites, ID flowers, answer questions. Also, botanists on Facebook and people on Facebook were incredibly helpful to me in the beginning as I was learning. And then when I discovered dead talamy, it was more a matter of validating what I was feeling, sort of putting words and science to how I was understanding what I was seeing and what my goals were, which was biodiversity, and that it's complicated and that complication builds resilience. I got a new appreciation for bugs. I'm just so happy when I see bugs now. I learned terms like carrying capacity and ecosystem services, how complex systems create more complex systems as things can rely on each other. When in doubt, help oaks is a very helpful maxim when you're just overwhelmed with all of these possible projects to take on. Okay, help oaks. That's nice and simple. Homegrown National Park is Doug Tallamy's nationwide campaign to get people to plant native plants in their backyards as a way to extend biodiversity. A great program. And what I learned, really, I use all the time, and it's first do no harm and pick your battles are the main ways that I approach what I do. I repeat it to myself all the time. First do no harm, all of the hazards of the work site, including the hazards to the plants that you're trying to protect. You're there to help. And it was, you have to clean your tools, you have to clean your work clothes. If you don't know what it is, leave it alone. When I make a mistake, like when I pull something that's good, when I'm trying to pull a weed, I stop and realize that I'm going too fast, pull back. And pick your battles. It's just, there's so much to do, and you have to have a way to focus yourself, or else it's just so overwhelming. So biodiversity and that guidance of biodiversity is really helpful for me. I seek out biodiverse hotspots and I put my efforts there. Which brings us to the Ridgewood Rock, which is one of the most biodiverse places in Homestead. It has its own plant list because there's a bunch of plants that only grow there. It's another north-facing oak woodland meadow remnant, which is where most of, if not all of the biodiversity in Homestead is. So here we are, that's my house there. Right next to a big eucalyptus grove there, meadow remnant. So when I first when I first found it, it was so obscured by broom that you really couldn't see that it was there. But when I pushed through the broom and actually had to crawl through the broom, I realized that it's a scenic overlook and was probably a pretty popular place for people, which is maybe explains some of the broom and the weeds. It's not far, there's a fire road up here. So this time I was able to collect all the broom into piles and then get it out of there afterwards, take it out. And the land trust got involved and contributed some money, and we were able to get the Monterey pine taken down, all the Doug firs, and we took out about 9 or 10 eucalyptus trees there that were encroaching from this big grove that's right next door, so that you have a whole area that is eucalyptus free. And this is a rock, so there's a cliff, and the cliff was covered in ivy. And I had a friend in the neighborhood who knew how to do rock climbing, so we went out there on a Sunday morning and rappelled down the rock and pulled off the ivy. This is the Ridgewood Rock as seen from below. The sort of bare, shiny area was where the ivy was. You can also see it on these trees. I guess I'd cut it off earlier. While we were pulling down the ivy, great big clumps of this moss and I think they're polypods came off, and I piled them up like peat. I made like these piles of it at the bottom of the rock and came back in the wet season and just sort of squelched it onto the rock, hither and yon. And most of that has survived and is still growing on that rock. And then another big biodiversity hotspot is a place that took a long time to get sorted because it was a different invasive, it was contoniaster, and it was just a huge, huge patch. And it's up here, another meadow remnant, like all of them are. It follows a path of a trail that went from Stolte Grove, which is down here, which is the redwood grove at the apex of the valley, and then just went up the ridge to Four Corners. Windy Gap is an important junction here, and brought a lot of the weeds in there. There's broom, and then there was this incredible infestation of cotoneaster. That's probably 20 foot tall, a mother shrub with all of these dense seedlings underneath, extends down the hill, really a monoculture of small seedlings. And this is in the meadow where I was standing when I took this picture, the last picture in the spring. So this is what the stakes are in this area. It's just this beautiful biodiverse area. There's California plantain and goldfields and owl clover and Oakland star tulip, lots of native bunch grasses. And a bit further down the hill, we found this dogbane, which I'm not going to try to say the Latin name, that Kristen Jacob came out and ID'd for me. I thought it was honeysuckle when I saw it on the ground, but this turned out to be a flower that had not been seen in Marin until then. Since then, they have found it in Mount Burdell in the new West Burdell. But so this made this a biodiversity hotspot and really worth dealing with, even though it was so overwhelming with this huge, huge infestation. Had lots of volunteers come out over the years. This is 4 years it took to do this. And in the end, I realized that volunteers and hand saws were not going to do it, and got the land trust involved, brought some money, got crews with chainsaws, and they cut it all down, weed whipped the little stuff, and hauled away the biomass. Actually, no, I think that's biomass down there. I didn't realize that was this picture. Um, you can see it's just a total monoculture of little seedlings. There's really very little else there. But I did go through and weed pull out into flats what native plants I could find. Some yerba buena and yarrow and strawberry and everlasting and monkey flower. And then the habitat restoration team came out and we put in a day, we covered the site with cardboard that had been collected by our local Marin Horizon School and cleaned of tape and stored until we were ready, and then put burlap on top of that, pegged it down, and put as much biomass as we had around to hold it down. And later the CMPS gave us a grant, thanks to the hard work of Tanya Baxter, to expand the site and make sure that it's secure. Uh, so these are the areas around Homestead that have been touched. And we've talked about this one where the cotoneaster are, this one where the Paticularis densiflora was, and then these two. But were many others. The colors are red for cotoneaster, yellow for broom, blue for agritina, thoroughwort, which we have some little spotty bits, but that's a pretty big one. And then ivy, tons and tons of ivy. Some of these have aggressively reverted to broom and are really kind of indistinguishable from when they were completely cleared of broom. And this, again, with these historic meadows, that sort of shows what we're trying to restore. And these are the abundant rewards of tending the wild. I mean, come on, look at this. We've got our striped coral root orchid and our piperia and this is the maculata with the no spots in yellow. This is the Fritillaria lanceolata veritristulis, very rare plant that grows in Homestead. Heuchera and bleeding heart. Here's our California tea, Rupertia, canyon gooseberry, starflower, Clarkia, cowbag clover, such a fun one. There's the Oakland star tulip, our rare Calochordus, owl clover, Actea rubra, just a wonderful, wonderful variety of flowers in Homestead. So thank you. And I wish I was able to take pictures of all the bugs, but the flowers stand still, so enjoy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marabeth. You might mention the yew.
Oh yeah, the yew. That was I found a tree along the trail, and I was giving a wildflower walk, and I pointed to someone asked what a tree was, and I was like, oh, that's a redwood. And the woman who ran the hikes for County of Marin was on the hike, and she was like, no, that is not a redwood tree. And I looked and I'm like, yes, you're right. No, that is not a redwood tree. And it's some kind of a yew. It's either brevifolia, which is the native, which hasn't been seen in Marin for a long time, or it's an English yew. And that's one of the mysteries that remains. It needs to be genetically typed, I think. So if anybody has some gene typing expertise, we would love to know what our yew is.
Okay. And people can unmute and maybe raise their hand or to speak. But first, why don't we just go through the chat questions? Yvonne Rojas asks, regarding the meadow with Fritillaria affinis, how do you determine to make it a meadow and cut down the bays, dug firs? That is, how did you determine it should be a meadow as opposed to woodland?
Yeah,
Probably those historical photos, perhaps,
yeah, the historic,
and the component plants.
yeah. And it is definitely a bit of hubris. I mean, that's that's why first do no harm. But in my experience, bay trees are weeds. They're usually controlled, and Doug firs, Monterey pines, they're controlled by fire. I see my role in Homestead largely as fire. I am there to try to do some of the work that fire would have done when fire was happening. And bay trees are pyrophilic, meaning I think they like to burn. So they would have been just sucked up easily in fires. So yes, I see the historic meadows. I know that they are meadows. If they're hanging on still, boy, they got a lot of meadow heart in them because they're under a lot of pressure. So that's how I determine.
And Yvonne also asks what the name of the rare fritillaria is, and it's a variety of the common Fritillaria affinis called variety tristulus, and it's consistently very dark, chunky, high-shouldered sort of blossom shape. I think those are Doreen might know if there are other traits that distinguish it, but it's quite distinctive looking.
Yeah, in Homestead, there's a little trail, and and it crosses a very small little rivulet. And on one side of that rivulet, there's Fritillaria affinis. And on the other side of that rivulet, for about 50 feet, there's this hillside patch of the Marin checker lily, I think is the common name, Fritillaria lanceolata veritristulis. And it's just this little patch every year grows.
Jane Medley asks, what is a thorowort? She's thinking it's spelled like the writer, but it's a Thorough.
Agaritina adenophora, something like that.
Yeah, it's a composite sunflower family, somewhat woody shrub that's quite invasive in the coastal scrub.
It's very easy to pull, which is just delightful of it. But you do have to take out the seed heads.
Okay, any other questions?
I don't have a question, but this is Stacy Pogorzelski, and if anyone here is interested in getting their hands dirty with land stewardship, we have started our land stewardship committee with CNPS, and I'll put my email in the chat if people are interested to find out. We have adopted a site on Mount Burdell and possibly other new sites we're going to adopt. So I'll put the volunteer email in the chat. Love to have you to do great work like Marabeth did. That's just very inspiring.
And sadly for us, Marabeth is transplanting herself this fall to Tasmania. And so there's room for volunteers with the Homestead Valley Land Trust. There is a new, what was her title, stewardship director or?
There's another board member who knows her plants and knows invasives. She just gets the whole bottom line. And her name's Kristen Ashley, and she's going to be a wonderful resource for the land trust. And we have a new land manager, a young, charismatic land manager, Grahame Maverick. So things are happening in Homestead.
And Eva asks if the Craterellus, that the black trumpet mushroom, has it come back?
It's the same place that we found it every single year. In fact, I thought you came and picked it because it goes away very quickly after I see it.
That's funny. Okay.
Hard to spot. You need to know where to look for them.
Yeah. And other people have just thanked you for the presentation and for your work there. It's wonderful.
And I'm Kristen, and I'm sort of taking over from Marabeth, but I just want to just acknowledge, I mean, she's just been tremendous. It's just amazing what is there for me to learn from as somebody who's kind of new to the board, but extremely interested in this situation we're in with climate change and invasives and, you know, all of those wonderful things. So she's a treasure, and she's left an immense legacy behind. So it's really wonderful. I know you guys all know her well, but we're so grateful for everything she's done.
Thank you. Thank you again, Marabeth. And next month, still working on a speaker. I'm always doing this very last minute. If anyone has program ideas, please send them to me. I used to only have to come up with 9 speakers a year. Now I have to come up with 12, and it's and I'm a great procrastinator. But we'll have a program for you. Stacy, you've got your hand raised.
Someone else had a question about tips on removing broom. I just saw it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you for monitoring.
I'm down to the point where I'm all for mechanical removal. I have 3 meadows that I weed by hand, and that I am going to try to make sure continue to be weeded by hand. So it's like the Ridgewood Watt, these incredibly biodiverse places. But otherwise, weed whacking to about 12 inches, remove the biomass, and then come back and pull the stems. That's one way if you want to pull them. Otherwise, just weed whack and drop the biomass on top of the cut stems to try to do some suppression of light. And then some of it will die.
And then how the seed can stay viable in the soil for decades.
Yeah, I know. It's quite overwhelming.
The plants leave a legacy as well, fortunately.
And our chapter has weed wrenches that you can borrow, which the information is on the website. Not sure exactly where that is. But yeah, you can borrow them from us for weed remove. Well, it doesn't have to be just French broom, but French broom or others.
Yeah, you mentioned in your program, I saw you mentioned Scotch broom, but you also had plenty of French broom, the Genista mons placilanus.
Yep, we do have both. There's a teensy bit of the other one, Portuguese.
Spartium gentium.
Yeah, very few, like 2 or 3 plants. So
and it's not to be so aggressive here. It's very aggressive up in the Pacific Northwest, I noticed, where it's cold hardy and some of the others are not. So you see it around Seattle more than here.
You can also cut and peel the stems of broom to keep them from coming back. But I only do that kind of work in the really biodiverse places. It's just too much for so much land to be cleared.
And Kristen writes that the Homestead Valley Land Trust also has weed wrenches that you can borrow.
Yes, we do.
And Laura Lovett reminds people that we have on our chapter website various resources as well. And Kristen says, yes, broom seed can last hundreds of years, apparently. I think pea family in general has particularly long longevity.
And it changes the soil pH, fixes nitrogen in the soil, and our plants don't like nitrogen. It hosts ticks and poison oak. And I find that it gets the plum trees to grow in the fields because it gives them a little bit of shelter. So then you get plums as well. It's just a terrible plant, really problem.
Okay, good. And one last message. We've got our October plant sale coming up a little over a month from now. So I'll be sending out a call for volunteers. We'll have a notice in our next e-newsletter about it as well. And the dates are, it'll be an online sale again, opening on the 10th of October. And then on Friday, the 17th, we'll be setting up at the Bon Air Shopping Center in Corte Madera or Greenbrae, and orders being picked up on Saturday, the 18th, along with in-person sales of any leftover plants that we might have. So it'll be heavy on shrubs, more so than in the spring. Yeah, let us know if you have any special wishes. You could contact me looking for any particular plants. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Marabeth, and
Thank you, Marabeth.
see you in
Great job.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.